Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Lisa Tamayo, who will be sitting in for Matt Watson today. Hi, Lisa.
Hello. How are you, Matt?
Oh, I'm just down with the queue time right now.
Yeah.
Queue time equals due time is what we're saying over here. But well, first off, welcome back, and let me introduce you real quick. So once again with me today on another episode of Startup Hustle, which is brought to you by Fullscale.io, helping you build a software team quickly and affordably. We have Lisa Tamayo, the CEO and founder of Scollar, one of our favorite pet tech companies here in KC. So welcome back.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to talk about lots of good stuff, and we've been trying to hustle out the episodes of Startup Hustle in order to increase awareness and the conversation about how we are handling changes. And speaking of changes, man, last time I saw you, we were seeing Post Malone, baby.
Yeah.
In the full scale suite. Now that shit's on lockdown. What are we going to do?
Gosh. Well, and I have to tell you, my family bought tickets for us to go see Lady Gaga in Chicago in August. So I'm just fingers crossed, man. That's big time bucket list.
I think you'll get that one in. I think you'll hopefully, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting day here in Kansas City. That was also the day of the Chiefs parade. So at that concert, we had Patrick Mahomes, and man, how many beers did that guy drink? We won't answer that. We won't speak on behalf of Kansas City's top celebrity.
Yeah, we love him.
So, well, once again, welcome back, and we want to talk a little bit about pet tech and how some of all this stuff is affecting Scollar. And once again, I like it when you're interactive. So go to scollar.com, SCOLLAR. Take it away, Lisa.
Sure. So this is kind of an interesting time for us in some ways, but not in others, because we're used to working virtually. And one of the main shifts is that we have partners here that now we can't sit in front of. Like, we can't go to the big campuses and pile in a room for these meetings. So that has been a shift. And we have a big corporate partner that we work with, and we had to learn how to put 13 of us in a Zoom room and be effective. And so that was a little bit bumpy at first, but our team was really used to it, and we just did it. We got in there and kept going. And we are really busy right now, preparing for some big launches. And the other thing that I told the team is that, this is the moment we've been building towards for a long time. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the world that we need to adapt to as we launch, as we get ready to promote Scollar and get it out there for people. This is still a moment when people have to take care of their animals. So how can we as Scollar be part of enabling that to happen in this very dynamic and anxiety-producing environment that we live in currently? So we've been having a lot of discussions about how to do that.
And for those listeners that might not have heard the first episode with you on it, can you give us a little background about what Scollar does?
Yeah, so Scollar is an open platform technology for animal care. So it's a smart collar. It's also a mobile app and a data cloud, and everything's open. It's kind of like your smartphone, that device that you carry around in your pocket. Is basically your world. It has your GPS, your calendar, your camera, all your games, of course, any sort of productivity things that you do. It's all there on your phone. And the thing that makes that such a valuable tool is that you can change it the way you need it to be. So Scollar is like that, except for animals. It's kind of like, someone described it as a smartwatch for animals. You can customize it to make it as personal and as unique as your pet, whether it's tracking the animal, monitoring their food and water intake, monitoring the activity, connecting with your telemedicine provider, getting training, activating the invisible fence or the pet door, getting suggestions for food and ordering it right through the app. All of those things are just part of the technology. And the reason that we can do all of that is because Scollar is an open platform, which means that we can make it be whatever the pet parent needs it to be.
So, Murphy's Law dictates that things will go wrong at the worst possible time in the highest volume.
Yep.
I think so many of us are living that right now. I mentioned before we hit record, I went over to the Full Scale office on what I felt was a fairly standard visit. Now I did weigh the gravity of traveling through some COVID stricken areas and decided to make the leap anyway. Ended up almost getting stuck. If you're interested in hearing that story firsthand, I published a 6-part series called the Corona Diaries, but during which I was forced to do a variety of things as a CEO and a founder that honestly, I never even considered I'd have to. I doubt many of you listening had a viral contagion protocol built in anywhere to what you do. What were some things as the CEO and founder of your company that you had to just like really all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, so this is happening?
Sure. Yeah. For us, because we have not just an app, but we have a hardware device. One of the first things that we've had to keep really close eye on is what's going on in China, because we're getting ready to deliver a product. We have manufacturing as well. And so, back in January and February, everything was shut down in all of the manufacturing regions in China. But we have a person over there that we've been working with who is back at work, and all of our partners have been in communication with us, ensuring that we can meet the deadlines that we set. So that was a tremendous relief, but we've had to stay really close to the ground on that one and make sure that, we can keep up the pace. And then on the other side, because we have partners now, we've had to say to them, look, this is the situation. We're monitoring it super closely and we'll keep you updated. We just had to build a little flexibility into the schedule, but we're still racing towards that schedule. The other thing is having everyone work virtually. We have people scattered all over the country that work with scholars, so we're kind of used to it. But also, we had also grown accustomed to being able to sit in the same room and really plow through planning and throw things up on a whiteboard. And now we had to go back to different methods of not being in person and still be as effective. And then the last piece is, how do you plan a launch when you can't get in front of people in real time? So we've had to figure out, how can we digitally get in front of people, and how can we build a community during this time? Because it's up to us to also build this community within Scollar and then create that authentic experience for everyone else around us. So there's been lots and lots of conversation about that internally.
Yeah, I think that there's been a forced pivot for a lot of people. And then, you mentioned just that whole I'm used to working remote. I've had employees on the other side of the planet for a decade and got 190 of them right now. But there is a level of difference. One of the things I think that there's no doubt that we're all going to have some level of and degree of change, both personally and professionally. And for some of us at home, claiming to eat everything in the refrigerator, maybe some physical updates to our general nature as well. But one of the things I think that there's been this influx. Like I read that 62 million people last week. This is last week, downloaded apps for video conferencing.
Sure.
And, it's really forcing some stuff. As someone that owns a company that's completely centric around the remote developer, I'm interested to see how people's working mentality comes out. You talk about, we've never had to try to squeeze 13 people into a Zoom room. Yep. It's a little different. And you get sometimes some companies, I've always, we work in the tech space, so I don't have this issue, but it's like, I can only imagine there's these people that are like, I'm not a quote tech person. Well, you are now.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Get it together.
Well, and so going back to the community part of this, Matt, one thing that we do with our own teams when we start a meeting is we do a personal check-in before we get to business. And so we've instituted that with every meeting that we do. We make sure to box it and time bound it so it's not something that gets crazy and it takes up a lot of time in the meeting. But it's a really good way for us to continue to connect. Like when you get into a conference room with a bunch of people, you shake hands, you check in, how are the kids, how's the dog, all that stuff. But it's much harder to do that on a video call. So we're very intentional about it, and it makes a big difference because everyone is kind of at a different place right now. Some people are handling it better than others. Some people are going stir crazy. And so it really is about that personal check-in. Also like, hey, how are you doing? And then once we all kind of have, brought that personal connection into this virtual room.
Let's do one real quick so people know what we're talking about. So you go first because I want to see how you do it, and then I'll follow.
Okay, so I am actually doing pretty okay. I will say that, we have a pretty good routine. I work out a lot. I eat healthy. But I've noticed that sometimes I just, for no reason at all, just kind of seem to go stir crazy. We have a dog. We walk him every afternoon. We get out and just like enjoy the outdoors and breathe again. But I also have a 21-year-old daughter who just joined the Army. And so she's at Fort Leonard Wood, going through basic and straight into advanced training at a time when I get 2 15-minute phone calls with her a week. Otherwise, it's just letters. And so I'm nervous about that. So I have to manage that stress. But otherwise, I'm doing pretty okay. How about you, Matt? How are you doing?
I would say that pretty okay is, I like to say I'm excellent and improving on most days. I'm okay and improving for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned, Lisa. I mean, honestly, I'm despite what most people might think, I'm the most extroverted introvert that you know. People with my personality style, which is like a 99 out of 100 on Drive, while we have the ability to be outward and social, usually like to be left alone for whatever it is that we're obsessed with at the time. So it's not a problem for me to not come out of my home for a month or longer. Overall, the things that have been challenging is, as the CEO and founder and leader of a company like Fullscale, I have 191 global employees, and making decisions that this last month I have aged. Now we're talking about pet tech, so I got dog years for sure out of this last month. Not only being on the ground and dealing with that in our office, the struggles of traveling halfway around the world, time zone adjustments. We had to close our office down and send all of our employees to go work from home. Now, even though we specialize in remote developers, they were all in the same location. So trying to make decisions that are based on the best interest of the company, because the company has to still exist later. And then on top of that, trying to really empathize with the needs of the dozens of clients that we work with is another hard part, because these are people that we have gotten to know, and we consider at Fullscale, we talk about the Fullscale family because we go for a win-win-win. We want it to be a win for our client, our employees, and the company. So trying to figure out where that is and how to do that, and trying to figure out how to be selfless and selfish at the same time.
Sure. And I think
so. It's been a challenge, but honestly, I'm really getting a lot of that figured out, and I'm feeling really great about what's going to occur. I think part of it too is, I'm a strong swimmer. Not in the actual pool, just in life. That's
the entrepreneurial kind of advantage, perhaps. I'm so used to reacting really quickly and in a lean way that I looked at this as it was coming down the pike. I mean, we saw this coming several weeks ago. I was in San Francisco presenting, and our customer success manager showed me some memes today that talk about the month of March and how it was the longest year ever. So, I mean, just like 3 weeks ago was the Academy Awards, and Parasite won Best Film, and all these funny things that seems like was a a year ago or a decade ago now. But adjusting and adapting is part of an entrepreneur's toolkit. And so it's, for me also, it's just a constant check-in with, how am I doing? How's my team doing? Are we still on track? What do I need to do to adjust? What do I need to do to step in? What do I need to learn? And just continuing that growth process myself, because just like you, we set the stage for everyone else on the team. And so if I'm crazy, the rest of the team's going to suffer. So I try really hard to just keep my own psyche stable and focused, with a nimble mindset, which I think is, something that you hone over time.
Yeah, I think, that I mentioned talking to multiple people, but starting with my wife, during the week of probably the 10th to the 20th, I learned more and grew more as a leader and an entrepreneur and a person. I went my God, you talk about, I think being a good leader is about when your company is successful, it's because of all the people that are there and not yourself.
Right.
And when things are tough, you have to really find strength to hold it up on your shoulders and shield everyone, which is sometimes impossible.
Yeah.
But having the location that I was at the time, being in Cebu at our office, and the speed at which things were changing. I literally gave a speech and laid forward one course of action, only to have to reverse that course of action a few hours later, because just things were changing so quickly. I don't know, it's really been a whirlwind, and now it didn't kill me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be stronger for that. And you mentioned the ability to pivot or be nimble or agile or whatever. And I've said this in a couple episodes already, but it was Darwin who first noticed it wasn't always the strongest or the smartest, but the species that were able to adapt. And at first, much like anyone else, I allow myself to be human, and then you have to start to adapt.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you can't do that, so the question is how are you going to adapt? So, well, let's talk about that for a second, because we're talking about the pet tech pivot. It's not a true or full pivot, but do you have some stuff that you can share with us about how you're going to get this product launch out with people still being squeamish about being in the same room with each other?
We're in kind of a fortunate situation with regard to how we view ourselves and what we feel like we're offering to people. So for us, everything is about the authenticity of what we do, especially given that our target market is millennial and Gen Z pet parent. At least, that's where we start. And they can spot hubris from 10 miles away. So one of the things that we're doing is looking at the content that we deliver right now in terms of blogs, in terms of community building. How can we address where people are right now without throwing it in their faces? Like you see, there's so much COVID content right now.
If I get one more email about someone's fucking COVID policy, I'm going to barf.
That was great at first, but now it's like, okay, got it. I understand. So for us, it's still about people still have real life needs that they need to take care of. How can we be of service in this new environment? And so with the last newsletter that we put out, one of the things we did was we talked about, how to self-isolate with your animal and things to think about and resources. And then also for people that want to support their local community, because community is super, super important to us, how people could get involved, whether it was Red Cross or local shelters, or even we did, there was a list that was actually published here in Kansas City that started called Curbside KC, where it was a woman that had put it out as a Google spreadsheet, I believe, of all the places that were doing curbside pick up. And so we put that in our newsletter, like, look, there's going to be all sorts of things like this all over in your community. Go find them. Find ways to support your community. Go take your dog for a walk. Like, really just do the same things you do, but just be adaptive. And we wanted to, and with the content that we're preparing to send out, highlighting local heroes that are making a difference right now. It's all very much the way we are in our normal voice anyway, which is all about collaboration and community. So we're just trying to really keep our ear to the ground. Like, what are people asking about? What are they struggling with? Let's meet them where they are.
Yeah, I set up a fundraiser myself to raising some money to spend at local restaurants that would deliver food to food service to medical providers. And I was shocked at we got $1,500 in donations in the first 24 hours. And I want to encourage anybody and everybody to steal that idea from me. It was really easy, and it was coming up on $2,000 in donations. It's running through the week. And actually earlier today, recorded an episode with, I crowdsourced a lot of that, like I let people make the donations, but then I put polls back out that said, where should we spend this? Where should it go? And a local entrepreneur owns a restaurant called the Wings Cafe, and it got an overwhelmingly high amount of support. So earlier today, we gave away $850 and said, so we'll work with them to get that figured out. But those are like the little things you mentioned. And, that just kind of popped into my head because I was looking at all these hospitals and medical care providers and like how overworked and overwhelmed they were. And I was like, man, someone needs to get these people a hot meal or something. Yeah. So,
and also you have all these restaurants that, some of which have had to close and have all this food that's going to go to waste otherwise.
Sure.
I saw a post today as I was perusing social media that someone was suggesting to buy gift cards at local restaurants that you can't use now, but just buy them, hang on to them. And then when we can go out and eat again, you can use those gift cards, but it's kind of like a pay it forward model, right? Like we'll take care of you today, you'll take care of us tomorrow. And I really love all of that stuff because
and that's important right now. I mean, I think that, one of the things that you mentioned that I really like, so you talk, we mentioned the pet tech pivot, but there wasn't a real pivot in there. There was more so, hey, look, there are things that we can focus on right now.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Startup Hustle comes out normally Monday through Thursday, and we have published additional episodes because partially it's like, hey, if we can bring this message and we're just now starting to, I'm kind of over the quote, like COVID theme stuff, but we all have similar problems, coming up on 300 episodes of Startup Hustle at this point. One thing that I've learned about all the entrepreneurs and people involved is we all have the same problems. We just handle them slightly differently, but not usually. It's usually a pretty 80-20 in the approach. And we refer to our approach or the things that we do a little differently, but in the end, like we all have the same kind of problems, and now the world has the same kind of problems. So that's part of like that communal thing. Now you mentioned you're referring to tribe building, which tribe building, the modern tribe, and when a great example of tribe building. So Seth Godin wrote a book about this, and right away he mentions the Grateful Dead. And that people would travel in the world to go see this band. And why? And it's because they had a tribe building mentality, and that the people at the shows found just as much value in the experience of being at the show and around each other as they did with the band or the music.
Right.
So, and that's something that any business or anyone right now can really put an emphasis on. Like, you can do this. I've been trying to, I've been trying to just make a few more connections online, do a few things here and there. Like I mentioned, recording extra episodes of a podcast, start a podcast. I don't know, do something. I'm seeing a lot more people doing things that are live. And I think overall, the world wants to hear you be positive and have just a generally not shitty outlook
Yeah.
because I think we got past that phase, and I think that we're going to end up with this great American comeback story here and be a part of that.
And it will
So
be different too. I mean, like one of the other things that we're looking at is, you talked about tribe building, which I thoroughly believe in, and the
powerful if you get it right. Yeah,
yeah,
it takes a while, but you got to get it right.
the Starbucks team has a book about that, which is the 25 lessons for building the tribe at Starbucks, which is also has a lot of the lessons that they learned. But for us, we had been looking at one of the ways we would get Scollar out into the community is through events where people gather with their animals, like corgi conventions or pet fairs or sporting events where people are allowed to bring their animals. So in the absence of being able to do that today, we still have to figure out ways to build that community and for people to be able to relate to one another, because that's what, just like we are with our children, like we go to the soccer games or we go to the daddy-daughter dances or whatever, we still want to build that community. So we have opportunity today that nobody in history has ever had, which is we have incredible digital tools. Like you talked about at the beginning of this podcast about the millions of people using these tools. And even still, you and I are using these tools right now, but we still can, because it's this global phenomenon, right? That everyone can use and leverage. And there's a lot of sophistication around it. So for us, we have a cadence we have to keep up. We just have to pivot onto an online model as opposed to going straight into, because we were looking at like, okay, how do we make the in-store model super immersive? Because our marketing strategy, our go-to-market strategy is very personalized, very customized based on what the pet parent needs and wants. So how do we do that in a digital format? And so we're looking at some really interesting ways to create community and that personalized system using some of these digital tools. And we're still on the back burner. We're still crafting the plans for once we can all get together again, and won't that be a cool day? But at the same time, we have to build this tribe. You're so right. We have to create this tribe of pet parents who still crave connection. And our chief scaling officer, Dr. Fumi Bar, she's part of the Kansas City Dog Club, and they have meetings now like this in this virtual format. And they still connect with each other. And I think that's marvelous. We still have to do that because that's still what we crave. We are a social species, and we still need each other. So we're just leveraging the tools differently.
Yeah, tribe building is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Is my buddy Joel Cummins, who's a keyboardist and my co-author of The Realist Guide to a Successful Music Career. Because bands and bands / personalities in general, they do an excellent job of creating a rally point. Now, in regards to animals, that's another. There's a few things that go well. You always hear people like, "Oh, just post a picture of a puppy and everyone will click like." And there are some things that are very well suited for building a tribe around. Animals are one. There's a lot of different things, and there's probably something that here at Startup Hustle we do that through entrepreneurship, and it's and that doesn't that the amount of support and input that we get from so many different people, that like we look at 300 episodes as that's our tribe of mentors. And, I look back at just the amount of listens that still occur for stuff we recorded a couple years ago. I'm like, wow, so I guess that's why we did that. And there's a way for you to share your story. You talk about having to do things a little differently. Before I hit record, we were joking about our virtual nature here, because we've got a fancy recording studio with lots of cameras and bandwidth and pop filters and
my laptop on my lap.
And fancy signs, and there's not dogs barking or children screaming, and on most episodes, but but with that, there's a level of understanding and tolerance right now that gives you some leeway for producing early stage content. Because, like many well-known tech founders will say, if you don't look back at your first release later with absolute terror, then you hung on to it for too long. Yeah. So, take a chance, people. Like there's all kinds of stuff going on out there. If you've ever thought about putting something out, but you're worried about oh, I don't know if I could do it. Guess what? You can get away with it right now because everyone's sitting at home without pants on right now. Matt Watson, who wasn't with us on the other episode either, but he or actually was maybe one of our guests, Luke Wade, had mentioned that there was an article about from Walmart that selling tops like shirts was had spiked up dramatically, but pants were on a decline, and
that's terrible.
Hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. But look, my point is, you only have to spend half as much to look awesome. So. No, I think overall the level of content for the level of acceptance for content is at an all-time low, as long as you have something valuable or interesting to say. So,
you know what? I think also I will counter just slightly on that. I still think that there are times when I get up and I'm like, oh, just hang out in my pajamas today. I also know that my team is looking to me to be the leader, right? They their cues from me. So it's really important that I take a shower, and that I clean up, and that I put my pants on, and I show up, because we still have a lot of work to do. And so I think a lot of this, and you've mentioned it a couple times during our conversation, Matt, is a lot of this is your mindset. We're going through a lot of emotions, even in the scope of 1 hour. There could be a whole lot of emotions. Like if you accidentally read the news, it could throw you into a tailspin, and then you got to go to a meeting, right? But the main thing is, at least what we've discovered as a team, is we need to be agile, and we need to be very ready to adapt to what's happening, and also really check in with each other and make sure that we're all okay. Yes, I mean, there's been times when I've showed up to a video conference in my PJ bottoms, but mostly I still feel like I have to do business as usual, but in this new environment, because it's really important for people to feel like the boat is not the boat, the bus. I'm the bus driver is the way I describe myself. The bus is still on the road. We're careening down the highway at full speed. And so the people that have entrusted me, have gotten on the bus with me. They need to know that I still know how to drive.
You know, there's something you mentioned about working from home. So, you know, I believe that only about 1 out of 35 people are going to get it right. I mean, like, because everyone, oh, I want to work from home. Well, home's where the largest number of your distractions exist. It's also, it's because it's where your couch is, and a number of things. So I've been successful. I've worked from home since my late 20s, and I'm in my mid 40s now. And the routine side of things is important. So, and I'm normally not a waking up in the morning. I have that really nice home gym, which seems like a real genius purchase this last month, by the way. But, you know, yesterday I got up and walked on my treadmill at 7 a.m. just to like make sure I had blood pumping and was, you know, like awake and alert, because it's real easy to kind of phone it in. And I did have, you know, you talk about being there for people. I've made a lot of phone calls and just messages to people to try to talk to them, like the people I know, and just say like, hey, they're like, hey, what's up? Why are you calling? I don't know. I just want to see how you're doing. But I had one, I won't mention who, said, man, I feel like a lot of my employees are phoning it in right now, and I don't know what to do because we're in a really shitty spot. I said, I don't think those are the people you want on your team anyway. So like, you know, like here's the thing is, if you work somewhere, don't phone it in. This is a time to step up. You got to get your shit together. This isn't a vacation. And by the way, this is probably going to last a little longer than you think it is. So
yeah. I think that's true. And I think also, you know, this is where the flexibility needs to come in, because those odd things, acting out or freaking out, anxiety, they're going to show up. And so I feel like one of my jobs on a daily basis is to make sure that I'm in a good space emotionally, so that I can capture those moments when my team have a freak out moment, and be there and just listen. Sometimes just keep my big fat mouth shut and listen and reassure them. And now, looking at the stats, there's millions and millions of people that are impacted by this. And so this is unprecedented in our lifetime. So I think the way that we handle it on an ongoing basis is going to evolve too. And so the amount of patience that we can show to each other is going to mean a lot. And even just a simple hi, like when we walk our dog every day, saying hi to people sitting on the porch and just, hey, how are you? Just, so that there's that connection always, even though sometimes I feel like I just want to go get in my bed and pull a cover up over my head. I can't do that because I need my team to not do that. And so that personal connection, I think, is harder in a virtual environment. It's still just as necessary. And this is our opportunity, to your point earlier, to really figure out not only just how to work at home, but how to do so effectively and stay connected with each other.
In the first book that I published, Balance Me, I have a whole chapter about personality styles in it. And, that book is about finding success within your personal, professional, and physical life. And the reason that I have a chapter about personality styles in a quote life balance or success book is to help people understand that your worst qualities come out when you're stressed or tired. And then also understanding that the way you communicate and the way you just your general interaction with other people is based on your personality style and how it mixes with theirs. Mm-hmm. So one of the, there's literally charts in there, and this isn't hard to find. I didn't invent this information. There's, I like the DISC personality evaluation. It's just pretty simple and straightforward, but it'll show you the positives and the negatives of every personality style. And so you can and I fall back on that a lot I know a lot about people's personality styles. Let's put it that way. And I've made that a focal point of mine. So I've trained myself to spot when certain people with certain personality styles might be doing stuff. And I'm like, okay, they're stressed. And I think stress is on a supply and demand curve. Stress has got an all-time supply right now.
For sure.
It's definitely not in demand. Mm-hmm. Usually never, but there's a shitload of it out there. There's just a lot of uncertainty. And, I have a high aversion to risk. Like what I'm doing might fail, but I have a lot of faith in myself to get up off the mat and figure something else out. So I'll be fine in the end. Yeah. Not everybody feels that way. And I think it's important that you understand, not only from potential clients or employees or family members, anyone, that everyone's going to handle this a little differently. And some people let worry and anxiety consume them more so than others. And, it's a time you got to deal with it, because freaking out, panicking, and being assholes to each other isn't going to help anything.
It's definitely not going to help right now. And the more great...
Should that be my quote for this episode? Freaking out, panicking, and being assholes to each other isn't going to help anyone?
Well, I'm a big proponent of positive language. And I say this to the team all the time. And so if there's ever a no or a don't or a negative in a sentence, I will challenge the team and say, let's turn that around and make it a positive. So I would say being kind and respectful to each other, enabling each other to catch each other when we are freaking out, so that we can be stronger together. That would be how I would phrase that for myself and for my team. Because I had a Reiki master who used to say to me, I would say, I'm not going to be afraid. And she'd say, you need to flip that around, because even anything that you put the negative word into, it frames how you see it. So I changed it and I said, I'm going to be courageous. I'm afraid, I'm going to go anyway. And so I frame everything in that way. And that really helps tremendously. And I've brought that to the team. Yes, this is a scary time and we're going anyway. So let's figure out how to be adaptive. Let's figure out how to support each other, and let's go.
Yeah, I've done a little background on the framing of words. I call it fact shaping, actually. But you mentioned, like, if you look around a lot of stores, and they won't put up signs that say things like "don't," and just like negative anything, because it's not generally a good vibe. Yeah. Well, once again with us today, we had Lisa Tamayo, CEO and founder of Scollar. You can learn more about Scollar, SCOLLAR.com. A little bit about pet tech and some pivots and maybe just a few good old lessons in life. Well, Lisa, thanks for taking time with me today. And I want to get back with you and hear more about the product launch, or maybe the virtual product launch, or maybe we use Startup Hustle as a way to help you announce the virtual product launch.
I like it. Let's do it. Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
See you next time.